Psalm 142, verse 4. Look to my right and see. No one is concerned for me. I have no refuge. No one cares for my life. Have you ever been there? Have you ever felt that? Has there ever been a moment when you looked around and it felt like you were in complete isolation, like no one cared? Have you ever felt like Tom Hanks in the movie Castaway, where you're on an island by yourself, completely secluded? You start talking to volleyballs as if they're humans. You ever been there? Maybe you felt like the contestants on the show Alone, where they're competing to see how long they can survive in the wilderness. And then oftentimes, the hardship of survival in the wilderness aren't the greatest challenges. It's the survival of being alone. And I wonder if Jesus felt this. I wonder if Jesus thought these words as he hung on the cross and he looked to his right and to his left. I wonder if he felt this. Look to my right and see, no one is concerned for me. I have no refuge. No one cares for my life. It's dangerous to be alone, isn't it? It's dangerous to be in a place where no one cares for you. There's an epidemic of loneliness that's happening in our culture right now. In a recent study a few years ago, there's evidence that says that 1 in every 2 adults in America reported experiencing loneliness. And it's more than just a bad feeling. It actually harms your health. It's associated with a greater risk of cardiovascular disease and dementia and stroke and depression and anxiety and premature death. The mortality impact of being socially disconnected is the same as if you smoked 15 cigarettes a day. Loneliness has a more significant impact to your health than obesity and physical inactivity. And it's an even bigger issue for your spiritual health. It's dangerous to be in a place where no one cares for you spiritually because it's incredibly easy to drift away from God. And so we need people in our corner to help pull us toward God. It's that together part of what Doc always says. You know what I'm talking about? He's got this saying that he says all the time. We've all kind of adopted it. He says that we're doing life with God, for God, God's way, together. That there's something significant about us doing life together. And there's another thing that Doc says. He talks about how we have this responsibility to drag each other to heaven. And if you're alone, you're in a dangerous place. It means that you don't have anyone dragging you towards heaven. But I don't think that's the biggest problem. We're talking about friendships today, but I don't think that loneliness is the biggest issue that we face. I think all of us know intuitively that we need friends. You may experience loneliness, we may experience loneliness, right? But nearly all of us are working on resolving that already. That's just natural to us. We crave relationships, and we naturally work to foster them. I think the bigger issue is that we're all so desperate to not be lonely. We're so desperate to not be lonely that we will take friendship anywhere we can find it. And that's dangerous, isn't it? Is that your story? If it's not your story, I guarantee you know someone who does have that story, right? Do you know anyone who got married to someone that they shouldn't have? They were lonely, and so they connected with someone, and they knew it wasn't right, but they didn't want to be alone. And now they continue to pay for that decision. Do you know anyone who ended up in jail because they wanted a friend so badly that they would choose a bad friend to avoid being alone? Do you know anyone who lost their job or got kicked out of school or got an addiction because of their friends? You see, it'd be better for some of us to be more lonely, right? Because a bad friend is worse than no friends at all. And when we feel lonely, we think we need more friends. I don't think that's true. I don't think that the majority of us need more friends. I think the majority of us need better friends. And there's different levels of friends, right? You can see this with Jesus. He had different levels of friendships because not all friendships are created equal. There's times when you see him with these massive crowds. We're told one time there's 5,000 men listening to him, which means that there was even more women, more children, and there's no way in the world he would have known all their names except that he's Jesus, and so his rules aren't our rules, right? But either way, that's an example of kind of like the public, right? The 5,000, this large gathering, the general group of humanity that's around you, right? Very loose acquaintances. There's another time that we're told Jesus sends out the 70 to do ministry. We're not told who they are, we're just told the 70. It's kind of their practice run to go do ministry. And it's a smaller group. You could probably call that Jesus's like social group. He would have known them pretty well, but we don't know their names because they weren't on that inner circle with Jesus, right? Jesus also had 12 disciples, and that would have been a much more personal group, right? Much more serious. But even that was a large group compared to the 3 that he was closest to. Jesus had an intimate 3, Peter, James, and John. And even within the group of his disciples, even though he got it down to 12, there were 3 who were closer to him than all the others. Because there's differences in friendships. Not all friendships are created equal. There's levels to this. Heard a story this week of a woman who attended the funeral of another lady that she was friends with. And when she arrived at the viewing, someone greeted her as she walked in, and they asked this woman if she was a close friend of the woman who had passed. And her answer was no. She says, no, we were only acquaintances. And then she qualified it. She said, we hadn't cried together. And that's it, isn't it? Is different levels of friendship. And so when we're talking about friends, it's not about the numbers. It's not about how many people you know. It's about how many friends, or it's not about how many friends you have on Facebook, and it's not about how many names that you can recite. It's about those who are close. It's about the ones that you allow into your life to change your life. You see, when we feel lonely, we just keep adding to our 5,000. We keep adding to the biggest group, thinking that somehow that's going to make us feel less lonely, when in reality, we probably need to pay more attention to the 12 or to the 3. It's not about the 5,000. It's about the 12 or the 3. It's about having the best type of friends. I'm going to use a phrase this morning. I'm going to say best friend a lot this morning, but I'm not using that phrase in the way that we would, like a BFF or a bestie. That's not what I'm talking about. It's weird for a 40-year-old man to say those things. The friend, we think about best friend. We think about the friend that we love the most, the friend that we get along with the best, or the friend that we have the most in common. I'm not going to be using the words in that kind of a way. When I'm saying best, I'm referring to the type of friendships, the quality of friendships. I'm talking about the different qualities of friends, and it's the best kind of friend, because not all friendships provide the same value. Not all friendships are created equal. Friends that I'm talking about today are the best kinds of friends, and they're superior to other friends. Your inner 3 needs to have the top qualities of friendship. But don't fall into the trap that everything we talk about today is about your friends. It's going to be really easy to sit back and be evaluating the people around you without ever looking at yourself. At the end of this sermon, I'm going to ask you first to score yourself, to evaluate yourself, because everybody wants a good friend, but not everybody wants to be a good friend. In order to find good friends, you probably need to be a better friend. And as we go through this, you need to be thinking of yourself first, not just about the people around you. Think of yourself first. Are you the kind of friend that people in your life need? Are you the best kind of friend? We're also going to look at your inner circle, though. We're going to address that. And you need to evaluate your friends. You need to evaluate your inner 3. Maybe it's time for you to find some of the best kind of friends. Maybe you need to move some people to different levels of friendship. Maybe some are too close and you need to kind of push them out to a different level. Maybe some that you can see in the outer levels need to be closer because that's what you need in your life. I want you to look at your friendships and what the best kinds of friends are. And we're going to start with this. The best friends are constant. Proverbs 17 says, a friend loves at all times and a brother is born for adversity. A best friend is constant, like a brother. And I know that some of you are thinking that you don't need another friend like your brother, right? And I get that. But that's not how it should be. A brother is family, and families can be broken. Sometimes brothers aren't as constant as they should be, but families should care for family, right? A brother can pick on a brother, but if you pick on the brother, then you have to deal with all the brothers, right? That's what a family should be. That's what it should look like. And when Solomon writes this, he's writing in a time in history into a culture where there was a high level of commitment within the family, a little bit different than it is for us now. There was a strong obligation to care for family. Our culture misses this. When Solomon writes this, everyone would agree that you could count on your brother during adversity. He was obligated to show up. What's interesting about this proverb is that Solomon is comparing it to a friend, and a friend is actually better. They're better than a brother. A best friend does the same thing that a brother would do. They don't come and go, they're constant, but it's better because the friend doesn't have to. They want to. They're always there, except that they aren't obligated. They want to be there for you. Family shows up sometimes because they have to. It's an obligation. A friend shows up because they want to. And what does it mean that a friend loves at all times? What does that mean? A true friend is someone that you can turn to in all seasons of life. A true friend is going to be there with you in the good times, but they're also going to love you enough to be there for the hard times and the mundane and the changing times and everything else in between, right? A true friend is actually proven in the hard times. One of the most painful parts of moving here from Indiana a couple years ago was my family and I pulled out of our house away from some really good friends. We had to leave some relationships behind, and yet good friends, true friends, the ones who are most constant are the ones that are still a part of our lives. Last weekend, my daughter graduated from high school, and we had a grad party for her, and I was surprised by the number of friends that we had come down from Indiana to celebrate her and to celebrate us, to celebrate with us. Those are good friends. That's what constant looks like. But friendships like that don't just appear overnight. It takes work, and it takes grace, and it takes time. See, having a good friendship takes work. You can't be constant without there being some friction or some conflict. Loving at all times is going to take some work because it isn't easy to be someone who loves another person at all times. It isn't easy to go on loving your friend when circumstances change, like getting married or having kids or moving or getting a new job. To be a constant friend requires intentionality and energy, and those words are exhausting. But to get the best kind of friend, you probably have to be the best kind of friend. It takes work. And it takes grace, which is work in a different way, because there's going to be friction in a relationship, because we all stumble, we all sin, we all do stupid stuff. And so relationships suffer because of sin and because of stupid. And so moving past friction is work with grace. For friendship to be constant, friends have to be able to both seek forgiveness and grant forgiveness. Proverbs 17:19 says, "He who covers over an offense promotes love, but whoever repeats the matter separates close friends." Doc talked a lot last week about forgiveness. And it's necessary for a relationship to remain constant, to exist over time. There will have to be forgiveness for grievances. It's going to require a lot of it. And a friendship takes time. It takes time. Loving at all times requires time to pass to be proven. Aristotle says it this way. He says the desire for friendship comes quickly. Isn't that true? We all have this desire and it comes quickly. It's easy. It's just natural to us. It's not hard. He says the desire for friendship comes quickly. Friendship does not. Friendships take time. It's not something that happens quickly. There's no fast track to lasting friendships. They're cultivated. It happens in the daily, the weekly, the monthly ritual of caring for one another and being with one another, being faithful to one another over time. Friendships take time. They have to be cultivated. And as a friendship is cultivated, it gains the ability to be candid. Through work, over time, with grace, a good friendship that is constant earns the credibility to be candid, and the best friends are candid. They tell the truth with grace. The best kind of friends will tell you the truth in a graceful way. Proverbs 27 says, "Better is open rebuke than hidden love. Wounds from a friend can be trusted, but an enemy multiplies kisses." True friends confront one another when they're wrong or when they're heading down a wrong path. A true friend is going to step in. They're going to say the hard things. They're going to say something that confronts. They're going to challenge what is with grace. That word rebuke there, it's a churchy word, kind of a Bible-y word. To rebuke someone is to sharply correct them. This proverb is telling us that rebuke, and this is wild to me, this goes against every inclination within us, but that rebuke is better than hidden love. Rebuke is better than hidden love. Wisdom says a rebuke is better than someone staying silent out of love for the other person. Oscar Wilde puts it this way, and I really like it. That's like the kind of thing you want to put on a t-shirt. He says, "A true friend stabs you in the front." I like that. An enemy stabs you in the back. A good friend also stabs you. You're going to get stabbed one way or the other. But they're going to stab you to your face. And Solomon says it's an incredible blessing. because they're going to speak truth, not flattery. A true friend hurts you sometimes. It's not a wild, careless hurt. It's a calculated, caring hurt. It's kind of like peroxide. It's good for you, but it stings a little, all right? My brother-in-law had it's a wild story. He had a motorcycle wreck in Haiti, and it led to this strange story where a neighbor woman, Haitian woman, came over and stripped him of his clothes and rubbed him down with oranges to clean him. Said it was the most painful thing he's ever endured. It was good for him. He needed it. See, that's what a good friend is, right? They speak truth with grace. You apply it gently. A good friend isn't going to be wild and hurtful with their words. They're careful and they're calculated. They care more for the health of their friend than their need to point out something wrong. A good friend isn't going to blow smoke at you. Solomon calls someone who multiplies kisses. That's a fun way of saying blowing smoke, right? He calls them an enemy. An enemy can do this in one of two ways. An enemy will speak truth without grace. You can recognize that. They just say hurtful, harmful things to you. That's easy to see. But he says an enemy also does the opposite. An enemy will speak grace and no truth. They blow smoke. They multiply kisses. And he says it's just as dangerous. And how much more important is truth when we consider spiritual implications? Someone telling you that you look nice when you're a little bit rough, like that's a small thing, right? Someone telling you to live your life when you're being self-destructive, that's kind of a big deal, isn't it? It's an incredibly harmful lie when someone blows smoke at you when you're doing things that are ruining your life, either in the present or in the future or your eternal future. When someone just ignores all the consequences and tells you only what you want to hear, and that's garbage. You don't want that. So seriously, do you have a friend who calls you out? Do you have a friend who calls you out when you don't show up at church 3 weeks in a row? You need a friend like that, don't you? And are you a friend like that? Are you the kind of person who calls up people because you're paying attention to them? You need to be that kind of friend. Do you have a friend who will confront you when they see you getting a little too close to someone who isn't your spouse? You need a friend like that. And you need to be a friend like that. Do you have a friend who will take action when your sin is destroying your eternity? Do you have a friend like that? And are you a friend like that? Because you need it, and because someone in your life needs it. You need a candid friend. You need someone who speaks truth with grace. They are the best type of friend to have. Which leads to a couple other big ideas. When looking for a good friend, the best kind of friend, they need to be someone that's constant and candid. But you have a responsibility in this as well, and it starts with your need to choose, because the best friends are the ones who are chosen. You have the ability to choose what level of friendship every person in your life gets to occupy. Proverbs chapter 13 says, "He who walks with the wise becomes wise, but the companion of fools will suffer harm." That's another good one to put on a shirt, right? When it comes to friendship, we have a choice. And this isn't true of your family. You don't get to choose your family. You get what you get. And it's kind of true with your neighbors. Like you can buy a house and you can choose who's going to live next to you until you live there for a bit, and then they move and new people move in, and you don't get to pick your neighbors anymore, do you? And you can kind of choose your coworkers until you've been there for a while and people quit and people get hired and suddenly it's not the people you chose. Students don't get to pick their classmates. You don't get to pick most of the people who are around you most of the time, but you do get to choose your friends. You absolutely get to choose your friends. And it matters who we choose because we become like who we surround ourselves with. You are the evidence of the people in your life. You are the effect of the people in your life. And I can go through my life and I can point out all sorts of different things that I enjoy, and each of them is attached to a face and to a name. We could talk about the board game Risk, which is about as nerdy as I get, right? And we could talk about this new video game that's getting ready to come out, EA Sports College Football, and I'm way too excited being a 40-year-old man for something like that, okay, but it's a big deal. Hasn't come out in over a decade. I'm very excited, all right? We're going to move on. We could talk about disc golf. All right? There's all sorts of things in my life, and we could talk about them, and each of them is tied to a name and to a face, people that I think of when I think of those things. And I enjoy them because of the person. And we could talk about shopping for antiques, which is kind of embarrassing. And hiking, which is less so. We could talk about my love of Panera bread. That's weird. It's because of my wife. You have to be choosy, guys, all right? You have to pay attention to the choices that you make. It matters who we choose. The people in our life are going to impact us and affect us. And according to Solomon, wisdom is taught and caught. It's taught and caught. Character is contagious. It's true of both wisdom and foolishness. You can catch them both. If you hang out with fools, you're going to get what fools get. If you hang out with the wise, you're going to get what wise people get. And there's all sorts of wisdom about this in Proverbs. Chapter 22 says, do not make friends with a hot-tempered man. Do not associate with one easily angered, or you may learn his ways and get yourself ensnared. There's a strong warning here, guys. Beware who you befriend. Choose wisely. It's not up to us to determine if there's going to be any influence. It's going to be influence one way or the other. We're all influenced. But we do have the opportunity to decide who gets to do the influencing. And I'm passionate about this because this is my testimony. This is my story. I firmly believe that I'm standing in front of you today because of decisions I made about my friends when I was 16 years old. And that is one of the most ridiculous statements you could ever even hear from a preacher, right? That a 16-year-old boy would make wise decisions. Look, it doesn't make sense to me either, all right? I look back and it's strange, but my life took a turn when I took seriously who my inner three were. When I was 16 years old, I had a group of friends that were mostly good kids, but they were 16-year-old boys, right? And they were a little bit wild and they were a little bit reckless, and I had a lot of fun with them, but they were on a path to destruction. And I was on that path with them. And I had a conviction within me that I couldn't live the way that I was living with them without it finally catching up to me and costing me big time. And I had a conviction that I was called into ministry, which is also weird for a 16-year-old boy. And at the same time, I was looking at myself and I was recognizing I wasn't even a good Jesus follower. And so I made a decision. I intentionally moved people who were in my inner circle out. I didn't end friendships with them. I just moved them further away. I didn't let them have the same level of influence. And I intentionally began pursuing a relationship with a couple of guys that I trusted to be in my inner circle. And it sounds really weird. It sounds as weird to me as it does to you right now, I promise. It's so weird. And I didn't discuss it with them. I didn't ask them to be my friends. I barely even knew these guys. I just knew that Justin and Andy weren't going to take me the same paths that I was going down. That's all I knew. And I knew that if I wanted to be different, I had to surround myself with different people. And so I began to follow them around, and I began to annoy them, I think, probably. I began to go wherever they went, and I started doing whatever they were doing until eventually they kind of put it all together and realized maybe we should just invite him. It'd be less awkward. And that's what it was. And I think I was the kind of friend to them that I wanted them to be to me. And I had those two guys stand next to me when I got married to Christina. It's weird for me to look back and to think about making these kinds of decisions when I was 16 years old, but it's my story, and it probably saved my life. And it took me a while before they became my best friends because it takes time to have a good friendship. It has to be constant before it can be candid. But it started with me choosing them. You get a choice, so choose wisely. The best friends are constant, the best friends are candid, the best friends are chosen, and the best friends are few. Proverbs 18 says, a man of many companions may come to ruin, but there is a friend who sticks closer than a brother. True friendship is found among the few. Because we can't invest the same amount of time and attention in every relationship. That's just practically speaking. And to think that you can is foolish, but it's not just foolish, it's also dangerous. Solomon's saying that a man of many companions may come to ruin. It's not just a practical issue, this is spiritual. The more friends you have, the more likely it is that you could be influenced negatively. It's why you invest your time in your three. And that's why you're very careful about that three. It's why you're very choosy, that you need to set yourself up for success. Because what we all need, what is wise, is to find a friendship with someone who sticks closer than a brother. And this word friend has been shifted so much. It's been redefined in so many different ways. We've used that word friend this whole sermon through, right? Like over and over again. And we've got to recognize that this word friend can mean so many different things. Because of technology, we're now more connected, we're more in touch, we're more available to one another than we've ever been. And as a result, this word friend has become so broad that it's used to refer to people that you've met once and now you occasionally see pictures of their vacations on Facebook, right? My family makes fun of me because of this. It happened to me 2 years ago. 2 summers ago, I'm standing in line at Six Flags for a ride with my kids, and this man's standing there, and we get to talking. He's pretty friendly, and so we get talking, and he starts asking questions about who I am, which is always dangerous because when you tell people you're a pastor, you'd never know how they're going to respond to that, right? Like you can see it in their eyes. They start quickly evaluating if they said anything inappropriate, all right? And so I tell him I'm a pastor, and I kind of brace for the impact of this moment, and he exclaims, and this has become like a running joke within my family. We say this from time to time. We probably shouldn't laugh about such things, okay? But he responds very quickly. He says, "Oh man, I love the Lord," which was a fun, that was a different response than normal, all right? And we were instant friends, and he asked me my name, and he pulled his phone out, and he looked me up on Facebook right there. And he sent me a request. I couldn't even pretend like I didn't know that he'd asked me to be his friend on Facebook, right? And so I accepted it, and we're friends. We're friends on Facebook. I spent 7 minutes of my life with him. And every once in a while I see something from him on Facebook, and it cracks me up. I laugh, right? That's an example of the 5,000. We're not close friends. Again, we spent 7 minutes together. He's not my friend. Our friendships look more like acquaintances with the 5,000, the public, right, than it does real relationships like it should the 3. And this is an issue in the church as well. It brings us back to that idea of loneliness where we started. It's quite possible, it's even probable, that many of us who gather here weekly wrestle regularly with loneliness. And we can know the names and the faces, and we can fill our Sunday with pleasant conversations, but we're not truly known by anyone, and we don't really know the constant love or candid encouragement of a true friend. The harsh reality is that thousands don't make your loneliness go away. It's the 3. And so you can be stuck in an overcrowded church foyer and feel lonely. And you can be in a living room filled with people and feel like nobody knows you. And you could be in your workplace with coworkers moving around all around you and feel like nobody sees you. Loneliness isn't resolved in the thousands. It's resolved in the 12 and in the 3. Your best friends are few. That's why we put such a large emphasis on our life groups. Because we want to help you. We want to help our church in our quest for better friends. Remember, I told you at the beginning that we're going to start with you. It's always easy to listen to a sermon and think about the people around you that it affects. But it starts with you. As a Jesus follower, I want you to be the best kind of friend. You need to be the best kind of friend. I want you to seriously score yourself. Give yourself a score of 1 to 5. How constant are you? 1 to 5. Do you show up when your friends need you? Are you someone that they can count on in the good and the bad? Or do you bail when things get hard? Have you proven yourself over time? If you've got guts, I dare you to text this to your best friend and ask. Let them tell you. See how candid they are. It's kind of a test. How candid are you? 1 to 5. Are you the kind of friend who speaks the truth with grace? Do you keep your thoughts to yourself out of love, or do you multiply kisses, right? Do you actually speak truth in love, even when it hurts? Are you willing to stab your friend in the front? Now, some of you might say yes to that in the wrong way, okay? Are you willing to stab your friend in the front, not out of hate, but not out of anger, but out of a deep love, doing so with grace? There's a good chance that you may need to become the best kind of friend so that you can find the best kinds of friends. And I do want you to think about your friends. I want you to think outside of yourself. I want you to evaluate your inner 3. You know who they are. You know their middle names. You know where they live, and you've been in their house, and you've been in every room of their house, okay? Like they didn't just keep the living room for you. You've got to see the whole thing, right? You've shared and you've done life with them. Your closest friends, are they the best kind of friend? Give them a score, 1 to 5. Are they constant? Do they always show up? And are they candid? Do they speak the truth of Jesus into your life? It's so important. Give them a score. And this morning you may realize that maybe you need to find some new friends. Some of the best kind of friends. Maybe it's time to move some of the people in your inner circle out to a different level of friendship where they don't have as much influence over you. Maybe you need to look at your outer circles of friends and see some people that you need to get closer to. You need to pull them into your inner circle because you know that you need it and it'd be good for you. Maybe it's time to intentionally surround yourself with the best kinds of friends. Maybe it's time to intentionally pursue deep and real relationships with the few. It's the wise thing to do. I want to pray over you, and I want to pray over your relationships before we step back into worship. Why don't you pray with me? God, I am so grateful for this church. I'm grateful for this day and this opportunity to be able to look at your word and to just receive some very simple, practical wisdom. God, I believe that this is a big deal. I believe that the people that we have in our life are going to influence us more than anything else. Our closest friends have the most control over who we are becoming. And God, I pray that we as a church would take seriously our call, first and foremost, to be a good friend. God, I pray that we would be convicted to care deeply about being constant and candid, being true friends to the people who are in our lives. God, I pray for our community that we would also experience the joys of true friendship, that we would be surrounded by the best kinds of friends, that God, we would be encouraged, pushed forward, that we'd be sharpened by one another through your word. God, help us to see clearly the state of ourselves and the state of our friends, and God, give us a nudge as to how we need to respond. Help us to take our next step, whether that's getting plugged into a life group, whether that's being more eager to be the right kind of friend. God, whatever that may be, help us to move forward. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.